No one would have thought it possible that conversing with dummies would land a man on Forbes' 100 Most Powerful Celebrities list and the Guinness Book of World Records, as well as earn him his own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. But Jeff Dunham accomplished all that and more with what he calls his suitcase posse, as he brought to life characters that millions found highly entertaining. He was dubbed America's favorite comedian, as he resurrected the art of stand-up ventriloquism by giving it an edgier, more modern take. 3 months after Jeffrey was born, in April 1962, he was adopted by Howard Dunham, sole proprietor of Dallas's oldest real estate appraisal firm, and Joyce Dunham, a homemaker. As an only child, he still had fond memories of his childhood, raised in a Presbyterian household in an upper-middle-class Dallas neighborhood. Jeff admitted to not being a cool kid, but he didn't think of himself as weird either. He did well in school and even had perfect attendance from 1st grade through 6th. While he had a few friends in the neighborhood, he mostly rode his bike everywhere and went off on all sorts of adventures on his own. His mother took him to a toy fair before Christmas in 1970 to sound him out on what he wanted. He was 8 at the time and excitedly pointed out one toy after another, thinking he would take one home that day. Naturally, he would have to wait until Christmas morning before he got his present, which it turned out was a dummy named Mortimer Snurd, a mass-produced puppet originally created by well-known ventriloquist Edgar Bergen. Jeff had previously watched performances by ventriloquists on television, but had never seen a dummy in real life until that fateful day in the store, and pointed it out to his mom. He and his mother went back to the toy fair, where the latter bought him a record album called Instant Ventriloquism by Jimmy Nelson. His father took him to the Dallas Public Library's bookmobile so they could borrow books on ventriloquism. He confessed to still having the book Fun with Ventriloquism by Alexander Van Rensselaer in his possession. Fast forward to 2009, Jeff gave a representative from the Dallas Public Library a $10,000 check for an overdue fine, and the audience laughing when he brought out that particular book on stage, still not having returned it. Not many people would choose ventriloquism, an act in which a person would create the illusion that his or her voice came from somewhere else, usually a dummy, as a hobby or a way to make a living, because it was thought of as strange. This wasn't really surprising, considering that back in the day, it was considered a religious practice used to foretell the future or speak to the dead. Its entertainment value was explored in the 18th century and went from there. However, with the dummies being featured in psychological thrillers and horror films, it gave creepy vibes to some. So what made Jeff Dunham go into ventriloquism? There wasn't really anything he was particularly good at or interested in at a young age. He couldn't exactly pinpoint why he found that ventriloquist dummy appealing, but its uniqueness and the idea of making it talk fascinated him. It had become a way for him to get out of his shell. He was never popular and just sort of blended into the background. He said, "If I developed this skill of ventriloquism, I could make people laugh. I could finally stand out." And he certainly did. Jeff made his debut as a ventriloquist in his 3rd grade class at the Northwood Hills Elementary School. It was for an oral book report on the Grimm brothers, Hansel and Gretel, with Mortimer Snurd on his knee and him pulling the string on its neck. He gave a 2-minute presentation, and encouraged by a warm reception, he gave an unscripted routine for 10 minutes in which he made fun of his teacher and classmates. Everyone liked it, and his teacher, Miss Bentley, gave him an A+. Jeff believed it wasn't because he delivered a good report, but because of what he accomplished. The shy, almost pudgy, fairly unremarkable kid with freckles and braces had found something that he might be good at. Jeff said that performing with the dummy allowed him to say things he would never say and get away with, at least most of the time. When he was creating his characters or materials, he didn't set out to upset or offend anyone, saying that he drew a line for himself that he wouldn't cross. For the most part, he just acted goofy, but still tried to inject edgier topics. When he had his characters say something they shouldn't, he acted shocked, disappointed, or offended, and then protested what they had said. Members of his suitcase posse that helped him succeed included Peanut, the naughty but lovable purple-skinned sidekick of Jeff, Jose Jalapeno on a stick with a Spanish accent, and Bubba J, a redneck who loved NASCAR and beer. They never failed to make the crowd laugh, and it was said that these were the most famous. The big-eyed, boogle-eyed skeleton Ahmed, the dead terrorist, was a failed suicide bomber, as he had premature detonation. It was introduced in 2007 in the Spark of Insanity special. His most popular catchphrase was, "Silence, I kill you." While Ahmed became the most popular character that Jeff created, it was also the most controversial. Not many, particularly those from the Islamic world, appreciated the humor in an Arab corpse joking about suicide bombs. In countries such as Malaysia and South Africa, where Ahmed was banned, Jeff rebranded the character and named him Jacques Murday, the dead French terrorist, when he had shows there. Here's an interesting trivia about Ahmed. Jeff traveled via a private jet for a show in Medford, Oregon, but the pilot had to abort the landing due to heavy fog. They landed instead in Klamath Falls, Oregon, but as the tower was closed and no one was manning the radio, the pilot parked the jet in a corner of the airport and waited for the fog to clear. As the pilots were shutting down the engines, 4 military Humvees surrounded the plane, and they heard a voice from a loudspeaker announcing, "All occupants from the aircraft, you must exit the aircraft immediately with your hands in the air." About 25 U.S. Marines had their M4 rifles pointed at them as they went down the steps. Jeff shouted, "Do you guys know Ahmed, the terrorist?" One Marine replied that they watched him on TV, and Jeff said, "You guys, it's me." That cleared up any misunderstanding, and they all shook hands. Walter's a grumpy old man wearing a frown and his arms crossed in disgust or discontent. Jeff named him after a friend's father, whom he described as a cantankerous old fart, and another welder who lived near his apartment complex. The character was actually inspired by the American actress Bette Davis. Apparently, Betty was interviewed by Johnny Carson on his show, and Jeff found her refreshing as she didn't care if what she said was outlandish or politically incorrect. Walter was a Vietnam War veteran and a retired welder who loved his wife but was pissed off at her too. He was a big hit when Jeff introduced him to the crowd. Although Jeff graduated in 1986 with a Bachelor of Arts degree from Baylor University, there was no doubt in his mind what he wanted to do with his life. He didn't have a backup plan, as he never thought that he would fail in his career as a comedian and ventriloquist. His parents had been quite supportive since the start, and Jeff could only recall one incident in which they expressed a little uncertainty about his chosen profession. It was during one of his visits from college, and his father mentioned how their friends' children were going to be a lawyer or a neurophysicist, and he would say, "Well, Jeff is still doing his puppet show." He never knew if his dad was trying to make a point or just making a joke at the time. Jeff was actually voted most likely to succeed in high school, and while he lived up to the hype, it took him a while to establish himself in his field. The goal he set for himself when he was still an aspiring comedian was to make a guest appearance on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, and he achieved that in 1990. His fan base continued to grow over the years. Earning a solo spot in the American stand-up comedy series called Comedy Central Presents in 2003 was a big deal. The ratings during its premiere and repeats were quite high and translated to more ticket sales and more shows. The network wasn't too keen on having a ventriloquist on their programming, however, so it was only in April 2006 that they finally agreed to air the one-hour special entitled Arguing with Myself. The response went way beyond expectation, which surprised not just the network, but also Jeff's team, as it had around 1.7 million viewers and was Comedy Central's second highest rated show that weekend. The DVD sales of that special were astounding, as they hit platinum within 3 months of release, and before long reached 250,000 units, and continuing to grow. The airing of the second special, Spark of Insanity, garnered 3.8 million viewers, which proved that his success with the first one wasn't a fluke. Jeff went on the Spark of Insanity tour from 2007 to 2010 across the US, Canada, Australia, and the UK, and made it to the Guinness Book of World Records in 2014 for the most tickets sold for a stand-up comedy tour, with almost 2 million sold. He continued to release TV specials, some of which he wrote and was the executive producer, and went on tours across the globe, except during the pandemic. Jeff has also been a voice actor in various TV and movie projects, including 30 Rock, The Nut Job and its sequel, and Smurfs: The Lost Village. His autobiography, All by Myselves, Walter, Peanut, Ahmed, and Me, published in 2010, became a New York Times bestseller, and in 2017, the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce honored him with a star for the live performance category at 6201 Hollywood Boulevard. Jeff was accompanied by Walter to accept the award. Since he joined YouTube in December 2006, he's gained over 4 million subscribers, and his videos have garnered more than 1 billion views. His stand-up specials, Jeff Dunham, Relative Disaster, 2017, and Jeff Dunham, Beside Himself, 2019, were released on Netflix Originals, and both met with success. Jeff's car collection is the envy of many car enthusiasts, not just because of the number, but also the range. He had the unusual classic cars, but there were exotic ones as well. Some that became much talked about by fans included the Ferret Scout, a British armored fighting vehicle he reportedly purchased for a zombie apocalypse, and the 1970 Plymouth Superbird, a highly modified version of a Roadrunner, having the graphic image and distinctive horn sound of the Looney Tunes character. He also had a Hummer with DuPont chrome illusion paint, which enabled it to change colors depending on the light. In 2011, he bought a 1966 Batmobile, the movie prop or stand-in car used in the filming of Warner Bros.' Batman Returns, 1992, starring Michael Keaton. They retained its look, but re-engineered it and put a Corvette engine in it so it was drivable. His fascination for Rotorcraft began at age 4 when his parents took him to a state fair and thought it was the coolest thing when they rode a Little Bell helicopter. In 1980, he saw a radio-controlled helicopter and was enthralled upon seeing the 4-foot-long machine lifting off and hovered 5 feet above the ground. He headed straight to a hobby store, spent $1,000 on a kit, and everything else he would need to build and fly one. After a few months, he had a $2,000 worth chopper hovering an inch off the pavement. By 1986, he was building a life-size 2-seat helicopter from a kit that he bought from the money he saved from his axe. He did it in a friend's barn and kept it a secret from his parents. People from the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, inspected his work, and he took pilot training lessons. Soon he was flying his home-built helicopter all over Texas. While a student pilot, and having logged only 40 hours in the air, he crashed it in a cornfield and rolled at 20 miles an hour until it stopped with the chopper lying on its side. Fortunately, he only suffered a slight bump on his head. Jeff's first marriage fell apart after 14 years. Try as they might to work things out for the sake of the kids, Bree, Ashlyn, and Kenna, it still ended in 2008, with him moving out of the house and filing for separation. His parents had stayed together for over 60 years, and he never imagined anything different for himself. Jeff shared that almost from the start they had problems that were never addressed and disagreements that were never resolved. He moved on and soon met Audrey Murdoch, a personal trainer and certified nutritionist, and found it refreshing that she'd never heard of him. While his parents liked her when he introduced her to them, it took a while for his kids to accept her. Jeff was 50 when he married 32-year-old Audrey in 2012, and their twin boys, Jack Stephen and James Jeffrey, were born in 2015. Jeff had come a long way from being an opening act to a headliner, from filling small clubs that seated 500 people to arenas with 16,000 people per show. He realized early on that you can amaze an audience once or twice, but you can make them laugh for a lifetime. This had become his mantra, as he said that he was a stand-up comic who just happened to use ventriloquism as a tool for comedy. He topped Forbes' list of highest-earning comedians in 2010 for merchandise profits and DVD sales, and his name would appear on that list again and again after that. By 2018, he was at number 9 at $16.5 million, with a gross income of close to $350,000 per show that year. As of March 2023, his net worth, according to authoritative sources, is estimated at $140 million, as he reportedly makes $15 million a year. Jeff would like to think that even with all his success, his core values remain the same. As a way to give back, since 2019, he's been putting aside $1 from every ticket sold in the theater and arena dates for charity. Thank you for spending some time with us. Make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss another video. We also handpick these videos which we recommend you watch next. You can talk to us on all social medias or ask a question in the comments below. Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you back tomorrow.